Mark of Ben's Breakfast Club.
What's up?
Good morning, boy.
Good morning.
Today, we're going to smoke the third of our Backwoods pipe tobacco. This one is buttered rum. And, I'm either going to like this or I'm not going to like this.
That's how that works.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to smoke it today in a Diplomat apple. Bent Diplomat apple.
I'm gonna smoke it in this one that I cannot put down because it'll make life interesting.
All right, let me see. It's a Devil Ants. All right, that's an acorn. Hey, you never did pick up your tamper.
No.
That would be correct, sir. Here you go.
Thank you. How's this moisture-wise? It's a little moist, but it's not sticking together.
Yeah, it's a little bit moist, but not quite like what we had with the original flavor. Oh, hey. When I was in San Diego, I went to the coolest pipe place. Well, I say pipe place, tobacconist. There's an area of San Diego which is called Old Town, which is where the original town of San Diego was founded. And it's got a bunch of old buildings. But what's cool about this place, it's a living museum. There's restaurants and all kinds of businesses there operating, and they're not trying to operate, necessarily in the period. But this particular tobacconist has been there since the 1880s. The building burned down at one time, but was rebuilt exactly the same, on the same footprint with the same materials. And it has, since the beginning, it's been a tobacconist. It was so cool. Now I'm sitting at a pho restaurant eating dinner. It had been a long day. I'd traveled with a rep. I was tired. I was still trying to get adjusted to the time change for me. And I posted that I was in the town of San Diego. And one of our followers, Alex, Tron, whatever the number is, Tron something. And no, I don't remember numbers, Tron. Alex, sorry, I'll never remember your name. Anyway, he said, hey, are you going to stop by this tobacconist? And I said, no, I don't have any time in my schedule to do that. And then I thought, maybe I could just check to see where it is. 0.7 miles from where I was sitting enjoying my soup. So I went on over to this place, and man, was it so cool. It was like walking into an old Wild West saloon, and the owner of the place has this vast collection of pipes. And those are in old glass jewelry cabinets, like you'd see at a jewelry store with wooden frames, but glass on the top and the front and the two sides. And I don't know, there were a dozen of those cabinets around the room filled with mostly pipes, but also other smoking memorabilia. When you first walk in, the very first cabinet, I didn't see this because I actually came in from the back, because I'd parked in a parking lot off the back. If I'd come through the front door, it was a display of old cigarettes. And I'm talking like old Chesterfields and cigarette packages from back in the 1940s and maybe even earlier. And but the other thing that was so cool was every single one of the pipes he had on display, he had made a little placard, and it was really nice. There's some filigree that was consistent throughout the whole place. Yeah. That again probably was consistent with the marketing approach back in those days. That talked about what this pipe is, where it's from, and the date of it. Huh. And they sold Missouri Meerschaum pipes, and they sold a couple other pipes, and they sold pipe tobacco in big glass jars on the wall. Kind of looked like what you'd see an old drugstore with the glass on the cabinets. And then they had a bunch of cigars, lots and lots and lots of cigars. And the young man that was working there was dressed up in period clothing. He had a vest on with a pocket watch and a chain. So cool. And he had a hat that wasn't a bowler hat, but it was an old style hat. He had a good looking waxed mustache, and was really knowledgeable and was having a good time working there and talking to people. And I asked him, is there a particular cigar you recommend? He said, look, we have a store brand of cigar, and I'm not recommending it to you. After he asked me, what do you like to smoke? He said, I'm not recommending it to you just because it's our store brand, but he said, it's a really good value on a good stick. And so I smoked that while I was there. It was a good choice. And they have a little smoking lounge. You could smoke indoors in this place, which surprised me.
Yeah.
And the smoking lounge probably had, let's say, 8 leather chairs and an old antique chess set sitting there next to me. Could have been playing with somebody if somebody had sat down. Back door was open to a little patio that had a heavy wood picnic table. The front porch that you come in from the street and there's just this continuous porch along the whole front. It looked just like a Western saloon. Had benches running the whole length of that. And there were some folks sitting out there enjoying their cigars. And I hung out in that place for 2 hours. And man, what a great place. Now, I don't, of course, again, I don't remember the name.
Right.
But let me look this up. And if you're ever in San Diego, just go on Yelp or go on Google, look for a tobacconist. And it's the tobacconist that's in Old Town. And if I look on my Instagram feed, I posted a picture. So, how about you, boy? What you been up to?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Been up to nothing. I mentioned we've been working around the house a little bit, and
What do you mean by that?
well, I'm mostly we're trying to move, get rid of stuff left by the previous occupants.
Oh, tell me more about them.
Well, they communicated. Oh, that's cool.
Actually, that's not it. That's the one right next door.
They have non-verbally communicated. Even cooler. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That a lack of interest in taking care of their own stuff. So we're helping out, being good citizens, and taking care of it for them.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. The name of this place is Racine and Laramie. RACINE and LARAMIE. Racine and Laramie, dealers in tobacco, cigars, and pipes. If you go to my Instagram feed, the Aristocob feed, and go back a week or so, you will find way too many pictures. While I was sitting there, I just kept posting picture after
About
picture.
4 weeks or so.
Yeah, it's a neat looking shop. Sorry, take us back to that.
No.
Didn't you say you were finding remnants of a once thriving corncob pipe business?
Yeah. But looks like they got out of Dodge pretty quickly, and so left a good number of seconds for me to claim as my own. So I was thankful for that. No, we've been working on clearing out big swaths of the garage. We did that this past weekend, and but we've also been working outside a little bit. Allison wanted to grow a garden this year, and so she reached out to our brother-in-law Isaac to ask if he had any recommendations. He has spent the last year working with a carpenter who does various handyman house projects. He's working on a large chicken coop right now. He's been building garages and doing all sorts of stuff. And so I asked for a recommendation. And he said, yeah, I got some great ideas. And let me get all of the wood that you would need for that. Because I know a guy who just has piles of wood that is lying around he's not doing anything with. And yeah, let me come. I'll come. I'll help you put it up. And then I'll use my truck and go pick up a meter of dirt. And I mean, he spent a whole day at our house helping set this up. Yeah, and so they were able to build two garden boxes, raised 8 inches, and so she's planted some stuff. But unfortunately, she thinks it was right before the deep frost, and so she thinks that the tomatoes she planted may not make it. But we did that. But when I knew that he was coming, I asked him, do you have access to any larger lumber? He said, yeah, we've got big trunks, trunks of trees. And I said, well, could you bring me one? I said, sure. And I said, how big? He had taken one of these a couple years ago and had oiled it and made himself a cutting board out of it. And it's a beautiful cutting board. And so he said, yeah, like huge, yay big. I said, okay, great. So we brought them over and then ended up slicing them down into chunks about 1.5 inches tall, and we created throwing knife targets. And so I have owned and I think even shared some throwing stars that are a lot of fun. I've just about worn those out. The tips have bent. They still work, but I recently came into custody of some throwing knives. Show you here. These are just a few. I have a couple different sets, but these are designed for throwing. They're a little sharp along the edge. They don't need to be if you're going to be throwing knives, but they do need to be sharp-ish on the point. And so we brought the log over, and there's a couple things I've learned about throwing knives before he brought those over and cut some targets out for me. And that's that really there are two primary ways to throw knives. The most common that you see in film, video games, that you see magicians pretending to do, is where they're holding it by the blade often, sometimes by the handle, but usually by the blade. And they're throwing it almost like a baseball, or like you would. They're rearing back quite a ways, and they're putting a spin on it, so that the blade flips through the air, end over end. And in order to land a hit, it needs to hit the board point side in, right? And so it's really easy to mess up because it could hit like here or here or here. Yeah, and so that's the most common way. Now, what's great about this method, if you ever want to throw knives yourselves, if you haven't, it's so much fun. What's great about this is the two biggest things that determine if it's going to be successful or not is the spin rotation, which is kind of dictated by how hard you're throwing it. And so if you can throw it a consistent way, holding it with a consistent grip, then the other thing is just the distance you are away from the board, away from your target. So if the knife hits the target and bounces off like this, then you know you need to take about a half step back, because in that half step, that extra distance, it will continue to rotate and will hit the board. If it hits like this, then maybe you need to take a half step forward. And so you can actually Google and find recommended distances away from a target that you should stand. So it's like every 3 feet, 7 feet, 11 feet. And if you stand those distances, give or take a little bit, and hold the knife a specific way, you will hit the target almost every single time, provided you're aiming at it and throwing it properly. And it's very, very satisfying. But what if the right distance for you is 7 feet away, but you want to stand 8 feet away? Well, you can't. You can't. And so, not with this throwing method. So the other way of throwing knives is what they call the no-spin method. I recommend you Google it or search on YouTube, and I recommend you check out the videos of...
Bill O'Reilly created this one, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Recommend you look for Adam Celadin, Celadin. If you just search no spin knife throwing, he'll be one of the top ones.
Maybe there's a link in the video description.
Maybe so. I'm not responsible for that. So maybe there's a link. If you find his videos, the method that he teaches, and there are others, is what's called no spin. And you hold the blade in a specific way, essentially like this. And when you throw it, you don't put a spin on it, but you're more just letting your pushing it. You're almost pushing it out of your hand and just letting it fly with the momentum of your throw. And so it will launch out of your hand and will stay flat on and will hit the target straight.
So regardless of where the target is then?
Yes, regardless of distance. So you can be near, far, different angles. He recommends, if you want to learn how to do this, start with the target on the ground, and basically you're just trying to throw straight down into it. That way it's really close to you, and it's just a natural progression of just letting the knife flow out of your hand. And then you stand pretty close to it, and then you progressively move backwards. And so it's great if you've got some throwing knives. If you don't have throwing knives, He has a video series on best knives for your budget, or best way to throw knives for your budget. When we were digging up some tarp that had been left on the ground to put in these garden boxes, we didn't know that later that evening we would be running outside to dig some of the pieces out of the trash can with excitement. So Isaac's torn this tarp up, thrown everything in the trash. Later that night we're watching this video, having thrown knives into these targets. It's a lot of fun. And I said, yeah, we need to check out this no spin method. We open up YouTube on my TV, and this guy says, here's the top 10 tools on a budget, best throwing knives. The very first one he recommends is a 10-inch construction nail, construction spike. You can get them for 50 cents, $1 maybe. You can get them by the box. You can get them on Amazon. And so using a no-spin method, as you hold it like this and you're just launching it forward, because it doesn't need to rotate at all, it's just a dart that's exiting your hand. He wraps some duct tape on them to give himself a little bit of a better grip for some of the videos. But yeah, we as we're watching this, Isaac said, I just dug about 10 of those out of the ground today and put them in the trash. So we run outside, dig them up out of the trash. It's midnight at this point. No lights. We're freezing. We are so excited to get these things. They're covered in dirt, to get them dug out of the grass, out of the trash rather. We tried to hit the target a couple of times. We can't succeed. Not that late at night. And so I'm gonna clean these up. Get some vinegar, or get some vinegar to clean up some of the ones that have rusted. I'm going to soak them in vinegar to clean up some of the ones that have rusted, because vinegar will eat away rust real quick, just so that they look nice. Wrap them in duct tape in the handle, and try this out. I am very excited.
You know what happened to the last one you did that too?
I know, it fell over. I'm very excited about doing that because it's super cheap. It's a lot of fun. Although I do, sadly, we have learned a lesson about cutting the targets. The first target we made, we threw so many that it actually split it.
Sure.
The other 3 targets, so he cut off 4 slabs. The other 3 have split just because they've dried out. Mm-hmm. And so what I think we need to do is we need to make them larger. We could also use a band. I know banding them is what some people do, but I think all of his videos he's using thicker cuts of wood.
Yeah.
I think it'll help with that.
Very cool. I remember when you guys were doing the throwing stars. You were down at Josh's place.
Yes.
Throwing them through all kinds of things.
When he bought the house, they left a picnic table, a wooden picnic table that he didn't want, and so we would stand it up on end and throw them into that.
Fun.
The one I need to buy now that this guy has, he did a side-by-side video of throwing stars and the throwing cards that are bladed on all 4 sides. The throwing cards work so much better. So I need to get a set of those.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned that the old ones they still work, but they're bent. I mean, can you straighten those? I know you can sharpen them.
Yeah. They could be straightened out.
Okay.
Yeah, and they don't really need to be sharp to pierce.
Just pointy.
Yeah, just pointy.
Oh, cool. That looks like it is the base of a really good knife. You could put a handle on that puppy.
Yeah.
Are these expensive?
These are, I think, relatively expensive for throwing knives. They're from Bud K.
Okay.
So I don't know. Robert Shiflett is a name I recognize, but I mean they're high quality. The other ones I have are punched out.
I mean that's about 3/16 of an inch right there. That's a heavy piece of steel.
This is a knife that I would feel comfortable if I only had these in a survival situation.
Yeah.
I'd feel comfortable with this being able to do the job. The other set that I have are punched.
Right.
So they're garbage for
not
knives.
Really knives, right?
But they're fine. You know what this guy and really for beginners, this guy recommends not having things that are sharp, not having a blade, because you don't need one.
He's using butter knives.
He was using butter knives and scissors, and he used some crazy stuff. All it needs is a point. In the intermediate budget area, he used a K-bar is one of the ones he recommends. But even on that, he said if you are only using this for throwing, dull the blade, because you don't want to, when you're holding it like this, you don't want to accidentally cut yourself.
Sure, I would.
You would, for sure. So
I'm something of a blood donor when it comes to me and knives.
There is a place in Durham. It's a new bar that is a throwing axe bar, and it is actually partnered with Boxcar Arcade. So they're going to have the arcade that serves beer. It's an arcade bar in the same space or next to the space as the axe throwing bar.
Can't see that going bad.
No. And so you end up basically getting a lane like you would at a bowling alley. You got a table at the end of the lane. You go up, and they've got the whole wall with targets, and you
So when are we doing
over the
this?
head. As soon as they open, they don't open for another month or two. I want to go desperately.
Actually, with my rotator cuff, that's probably a bad idea.
Well, you can come watch because I really want to go. People, everyone I've mentioned it to said, well, that doesn't seem smart. I'm like, how drunk do people get when they go bowling and doing other things? Generally,
they can get pretty drunk.
They can, but generally, not terribly drunk, and that's less. There aren't axes involved in bowling. So,
Well, speak for yourself.
no, that I have been doing it wrong.
Well, it all depends on who you axe. All right, on that note, thanks for sharing, boy. All right.
What about the tobacco?
I played croquet this week.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that's all I got. That, you know what, on a real croquet court
Sure.
with real croquet mallets, that is an interesting sport. I never would have called it a sport before. Yeah, it looks like a yard activity. That was really fun.
Yeah.
Challenging. I could be down with that. And it involves woodworking, so I need to make myself a mallet.
Yeah. That's like I played bocce in the
I
yard,
did used to play bocce.
and then we used to play bocce at an old person's rec center. It was totally different. Playing indoors, it was a lot less violent, which made it less fun.
Indoors was less violent.
We used to play in the yard where you could just chuck the balls and throw them, and you're just screwing around.
Isn't that how you play it?
Not indoors with a bunch of old men. So. There, it's very delicately rolling the ball. You don't put any power behind it, really. You're just letting it roll out of your hand. And because it's on carpet or clay, they'll play on clay. It rolls really far.
How about you? Do you participate in any of these sports? I think of things like shuffleboard and croquet as those old men sports. Curling. But if you try them,
It takes skill.
it does take skill. And this croquet court was right off of a country club's golf course, and I'm thinking, you know what? If you do get yourself in a situation where your rotator cuff's bad or your knees are bad, and you can't haul a bag around, that's a neat little transition.
Yeah.
I get it now.
It's
Never used to get it.
You know why? It's not because the sport has changed. It's because
No, sport's completely different.
no, I think you're just an old man that a sport is speaking to you now.
Looking for a reason to dress in white.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, how about you? I would love to know from your comments. That's it for this one.
Yeah.
Make it a great week.
See you guys.